I am so excited to be here today with my daughter, Rachel Christensen. She's been a marriage and family counselor, but how many years have you been practicing, Rachel, now?
19 years.
19 years. However, she comes by it naturally. I have to say that when I first had my two children, I had Rachel was 3, and I had a 1.5-year-old. And my husband and I were sitting at the table one day, breakfast table, eating, and we were having some conversation. I just remember I don't really know what it was about. And we certainly weren't yelling at each other, but my daughter, Rachel, she stood up on the table and put a little fist on the table and looked right at us and said, "Stop yelling at each other." I was so surprised at that time. I really had never intended to yell at my husband or kids, and it really gave me a stop and start looking at the way that I was actually speaking to my children and to my husband. So she's been a counselor way from the beginning, and now she professionally does that. So I'm excited to have her today to actually share with you about, well, I'm going to let her go ahead and tell that.
Thank you. Well, it's really nice to be here. Of course, my mom is someone that I always admire in terms of how she's raised us and did such a good job with her children and now her grandchildren. And I just wanted to share a little bit with you about bedtime routines and some of the things that both professionally and just personally have been important for me. Kids respond really well to routine. And I think that anticipation for children and what to expect at bedtime helps them to be a lot better in terms of how the night unfolds, because they know what to expect and they really enjoy like that time with their parents. And also, sleep's so important for kids. It's important for everyone, but there are so many mental health issues associated with lack of sleep. And so when you can make sure that your kids can get to sleep on time and get enough rest in their bodies, things go a lot better for them throughout their day, of course. And, right from the beginning, before, babies are even born, they're attuning to their parents' heartbeat, and they're really in tune with parents, their voice, and everything. And so as the child comes into the world, and as you are raising those little toddlers and little kids, parents' voices and the use of their body and touch is still very, very important for children in terms of helping them to calm themselves and to feel really good about that connection with their parents. So much of what I discuss with people in therapy is about connection, whether it's between couples or between, parents and their children, or with friends or siblings. It's very important to have a good connection with each other, and it creates a lot of safety for people. And doing a bedtime routine can be part of that time to connect as the day gets so busy that sometimes bedtime might be the only time that you have a few minutes to actually connect with your kids and to sit down and either spend some time in a routine with them that you're enjoying, or to talk and kind of hear out what's happened in their day. So some of the things that stand out to me when I think about bedtime routines are, again, like the consistency, and also a huge part of it is just staying emotionally regulated yourself as a parent as you interact with your kids. Now, a lot of people will ask, in therapy, what does it mean to be emotionally regulated? And I really like that term because it basically addresses the disconnect that we might feel in our bodies from ourselves, whether it's moving kind of up the scale towards anxiety and anger, or down the scale towards numbing and shutting down. And at any given point in the day, we might feel dysregulated in our body, and we are frequently getting ourselves back into alignment and feeling calm and centered in our body. Our biggest task as parents is to help our children emotionally regulate, and that can happen lots of different ways. But a big part of that is using, our soft tones to help them recognize that they're safe, and And we're using both our body, sometimes even just holding a child next to us as we're breathing can help them emotionally regulate and calm their breathing down. And we are using our words to soothe them, right? Oftentimes, when our kids are struggling and they're emotionally dysregulated, many parents will try to say things like, stop crying, or just go to bed already, or it's been a long day and it's time for bed. And children, of course, pick up on that and they even feel more dysregulated. Essentially, what we're trying to do in those moments as parents is we're saying, I feel really dysregulated inside, and I'm trying to control my inner experience by changing the outer experience of what's happening with my children. But that doesn't work very well. And in fact, when we can stay very calm and centered ourselves, then we're going to have a lot more success in helping our children go to bed and, really any activity throughout the day. That's really our primary task as a parent, is to help our children learn how to manage their emotions and how to kind of move through the world in ways that are productive. So at bedtime in particular, it's very helpful to one, for yourself, go into this kind of mindset in the being prepared. This is the bedtime routine, and you're kind of expecting it to maybe be a little bit chaotic, or just expect for some changes potentially, because that does happen. And as we do that, and we kind of have our own routine and mindset about how bedtime's going to go, it's going to help it be a lot better. So one of the things, like in particular, so I have 4 children, and with my children, and my mom helped me establish some of these routines a long time ago, is I have a song that I play for them on my phone, and it's 4 minutes long, and it's very consistent in terms of being able to go to each kid and spend those 4 minutes, and they like me to either give them a little massage or chill their back, or even just being with them and being close to them physically, like giving them a hug. So I play the song for them, and they know it's the beginning and the end, and then it's time for me to move on to the next kid. And so that has been a very lovely way to connect with my kids and to help them to kind of get in that mindset and get ready for bed. I think as a parent, it's really important that we get ourselves in a good mindset as we go into the bedtime routine. And, just on a larger scale, prevention is always best. And what does that mean? It means that when we are doing good self-care and when we have good boundaries, then we are going to be much better prepared to have those interactions with our kids and other people in general, that allow us to stay emotionally centered, so that we can help our children through the bedtime routine. And so as you go in to have these experiences with your kids, again, being in that emotionally regulated place, I always like to give the example of, when you have a baby in the hospital, they give you a sheet of paper around shaken baby syndrome. And basically what the idea is that as a new parent, you might find yourself feeling very tired and overwhelmed. And, when the baby is crying, they say to put the baby in the crib and walk away. And, if you're not in a place to emotionally soothe the baby in the moment they're asking for something, it really is better to walk away and not to shake the baby. And so same thing with our toddlers and our little children and our teenagers. If you have any of those kids in that category, it truly is best, if you are feeling overwhelmed, to give yourself just a few minutes to take a time out. Maybe, get your child in a safe place, and you can take a time out yourself in your bedroom or in the restroom and just take some time to breathe. It could just really be for a couple of minutes, so that when you go back and you're interacting with your child, that you can approach them in a way that is safe for you and for them, and they can anticipate a healthy interaction, because it truly only takes a few seconds to really break trust with kids. And you might have to spend quite a bit of time repairing that trust when, when you make a mistake that way. But the good news is that kids respond very well to parents being able to say things like, "I'm really sorry that I hurt your feelings, and that must have been really scary when I yelled like that." And those are some good empathic responses when we need to repair. So as you go into the bedtime routine, you are making sure that you're in a good emotionally regulated place, and you have these interactions. And you might, if your child is struggling that day, you might say things to them like, "I know you've had a great day playing, and it must be so hard to go to bed right now." And you can say phrases. My mom would always teach me about the broken record phrase, which is something along the lines of, "It's really important that we get our sleep, and now it's time for bed." And then they might say something, and then you say again, "It's really important that we get our sleep, and now it's time for bed." And so that can be a repeated phrase that you use with them. And again, you're keeping your tone very soft and direct, and we don't need to raise our voice. And when we have these moments with their children, and when they're having a hard time, again, using empathy to address their concerns and validating them by saying, again, things like, "It's been a really long day, and I know you must be really tired," or, "I can see how excited you are for the next day. Let's make sure and get some sleep so that we can get ready for that time tomorrow." It's also a great time to have conversation if that's part of your bedtime routine. It doesn't need to be. You can have conversation with them at other times, but if part of your bedtime routine is conversation, then you can ask them some really good open-ended questions that will allow them to share their thoughts. And it could be things like, what was the best part of your day? And as they're sharing with you, some of the good prompting questions are things like, "Tell me more about that." And then you can say things like, "That sounds really interesting. Is there something else that you can share about that?" Things like that keep it very open-ended and allow your children to share with you their day. You might even ask something like, "What's something that you'd like me to know about your day?" Or, "Tell me something about you that I don't know about." And so those can be good questions that will prompt your children to maybe share some more information. To touch a little bit more on touch. Touch is really important, because we are mammals, right? And mammals can't survive on their own without their parent or guardian, right? That is the definition of mammals. And so we respond really well to touch, and we are soothed by touch. In fact, we have a hormone that's released in our body called oxytocin when we are physically close to, or even if we're thinking emotionally around our loved one, although that doesn't happen until a little bit later in human development. But for children in particular, being close to a loving caretaker helps them to feel very soothed. And it's also very good for us as parents and caretakers to hold a baby, to feed a baby, or to hold a toddler or a child. And in fact, our children, we don't outgrow the need for closeness and connection, but culturally, sometimes we end up touching our children less as they develop, and they really do need our continuous love and hugs and touches. And also we can teach our children a lot about consent, and in touching, even if we go, "Is it okay if I chill your back?" and they say yes or no. And sometimes my children will voice, if they're upset with me, they'll say things like, "I don't want you to touch me." And then I'm respectful and I don't do that, because I think it's really important to be communicating to our children that they are in charge of their bodies, and they're allowed to receive touch or ask for touch in ways that feel good for them in the moment. And so we can really show a lot of respect to our children that way, and also connect with them as they let us. But I do find that children, especially as they age, will do a lot of this. they'll say that they don't want closeness, but they're really asking for that closeness. And, as an attuned parent, you will know and be able to read your children as you go along. And you can ask them specific questions about what they need and want. But bedtime is a great time to connect with your kids and to ask them about themselves and to find out more about what's going on with your children. It's a great time to help them settle into a good night's routine so that they can actually get the sleep they need. Because part of that, like good sleep, comes from that feeling of safety and knowing that they can rest well. And we know that when our brains are active and worried about things, it's really difficult for the body to rest. And so we can be a part of that healthy routine to help children to get the rest that they need. And I guess I would just say, as a couple things to think about, is that if your children are having a hard time going to bed, then you might check with their doctor or a therapist around some of the reasons that they might be struggling with. A lot of kids will experience different types of anxiety, or maybe there is maybe a trauma that you're unaware of, and those can contribute to struggles with sleep. But I would say that those are more the exception and not the rule. And if you put some of these good routines into place with your children, you might find that they'll respond really well to your routine and to your attention in this way. And but if they're still continuing to struggle, then that would be a next step in doing that. But yeah, so sleep is fantastic, and it's great to be a part of it, and it's something that you don't want to miss out on. As my mom has always told me, she says that the days with kids are long, but the years are short. And I do often feel that way at the end of the day at times, but it goes by too quickly, and you don't want to miss out on this wonderful opportunity to connect with your children.
Now, I have to say that we talk a lot about starting these routines early, and as she's telling me this, I was thinking about the fact that children learn from their parents and even communication. And I was thinking about a couple of summers ago, we went to the beach together with my grandkids, her 4 boys, and myself, and her. So I'd like you to tell that story about Malachi when he went off down the beach and what he said when he came back.
Oh, right. So we were all at the beach, and I think he had been teasing his younger siblings, and so he's quite a bit of a tease. And so I think I had told him to, take some time, and he was upset, and so he left, and he just ran down the beach, right? Well, he didn't tell me where he was going, and after a while, and it's probably 20 minutes, a half an hour, we couldn't find him. I mean, I had looked sooner than that, but we were looking all that time, looking up and down the beach. And of course, as is the case for many parents, there I was rehearsing tragedy, right? Looking and wondering, did he go into the ocean? And then nobody saw him. And then he, got hit by a surfboard, and now he's drowned somewhere, or, he got caught in a riptide, all the things to be worried about. And I think he was probably, I want to say maybe 14 at the time.
I had gone to the car looking
yes.
for him. We had all split up and gone different ways on the beach.
We were looking in every direction. And finally, I see him running up in the distance, and he comes running up to me. And of course, by that time, I'm crying. And he came and gave me a hug. And he just said, "You must have been so scared, Mom." So yes, he had, hopefully, I think through, the types of words and communication that I use with him, he is a naturally empathic kind of kid, but his words were really powerful. And what it shared with me or showed me was that, in my language and efforts with him, then he was able to also communicate empathy through his own words, even as a 14-year-old teenage boy.
And that's what we want for our children, why we start early, so that they have these patterns that they know it's just natural for them. So thank you, Rachel. She has been a blessing to me. Like I said, I've learned so much from my children, and it's been beneficial to me in my conversations with many people who, as you know, there's many people who just need to be heard and to just, empathize with people and say that must be so difficult for you, or just a simple line like that, which was actually the first line that Rachel taught me. She basically said, Mom, just say that must be so difficult for you. It's been a great line. Thank you, Rachel, and happy bedtime.
Thank you.